An ACL, if you talk to like any athlete and you talk about like ACLs, I think it's one of those injuries that they fear the most. You know, everyone these days talks about hamstrings and that, but I think ACLs is just one of those that the rehab process is long. It could take, I don't know, anything between 6 or 9 to 12 months. And there's always the fear of the second one. So this one, unfortunately, and as I said, I didn't know the squad really well. And that was part of the World Series, the first tournament in Dubai, which is always that first weekend in December. And I think it was the second training session we did there. And the player just went on a line out, and it's just the way she landed. You can see like the knee just buckling. I was on the side of the pitch, and she knew straight away that she had done the ACL again. The previous one was in 2021. And this one we're talking about here, December 2023. We got an MRI scan the following day, and as I said, it was not only the ACL reconstruction that was torn, but actually she had damage to medial and lateral meniscus, and the lateral one quite badly. And then there was like a really small, like an osteocondyle defect, which had to be taken into consideration as well. Listen, you know, like any other player, we're trying to focus on the performance. You know, we were competing like 4 days later. But we got started with that player, just keeping that swelling down to trying to really see if we could speed up the surgery. And actually, you know, the player flew back, I think it was like 6-7 days after that, and went from the airport straight to the consultant. The consultant was very happy with the way the knee looked. In terms of it was quiet, and she had regained full range of motion and decided to operate the following day. And it's only after that, when you get the report from the surgery, you know, that you can really see the extent of the damage. There was 2 big repairs, especially on the lateral meniscus. It obviously they had to take whatever was left from the ACL graft and to try to put another tunnel and just get another graft from this time from the patella tendon, and to trying to repair that osteocondyle defect. So, you know, the consultant pointed out that he's like, probably we're looking at between 9 and 12 months here of rehab. The player, as I said, is 26, and she knows that probably she will make it to the next Olympics. And that's when we sat down and he's like, listen, is there any chance that I could make it to the Olympics? And we sat down with the performance director, the player, the coaches, myself, and the rest of the medical staff. And, you know, as I said, listen, we could give it a go, and we'll know pretty quickly. Within the next 2-3 months, we'll know. We don't have to wait till we get to the summer 2024 to know if you're going to make it to Paris. We'll know straight away in the next 2 months. But I said, listen, I was given the chance to lead on the rehab, and I knew it is like, I could be as evidence-based as you want here, but like every single paper and journal out there, it will tell me that's going to be like a 9 months, especially being the second ACL, probably like 12 months. And I said to everyone, he's like, listen, I just want to be clear, and I'm really happy to take this challenge on board. But we'll have to think outside the box here. The word I mentioned was like, we'll have to be brave and aggressive, which doesn't mean reckless. I think everyone needs to be aware that obviously we'll have to come up with something that hasn't been done before. The fact that it hasn't been done before, there could be mistakes like along the way. And that could mean we could rupture that second graft. And as long as everyone is on board with that, let's go for it. You know, as I said, we need to be brave, but not reckless. And the player was the first one. He's like, listen, I'm here, the one going through this. Let's do it. So, and I thought that was very important. And we just came up with like a completely different plan of action. So obviously we follow the principles of, you know, what you want to do post-surgery and all that, but we knew that we had to bring everything forward. You know, we couldn't wait 5 months to start running like you would do with a normal ACL. And everyone thought it's like, it's just not an ACL, it's a second ACL repair, it's the medial and lateral meniscus, and it's some cartilage damage. There's a lot of stake here. You know, there's the knee's going to tell us. We kind of like, we really put our heads together, and we just look at the first almost like 12 weeks, really deeply, you know, what we needed to achieve to really just put her in the best positions for that second stage. That's where we start using the VueMotion there. It absolutely is pretty unique, and as I said, like since then, I think I've rehabbed another 3 ACLs, and if anything, maybe improve the protocol I use for that player. And I've heard another one that I've done really, really well. But there's like other guys and other players that basically you just need to take a different approach. So it is one of those that what we did, you have to pick, you know, you have to pick your players to be able to do that. Like not everyone will follow under the same protocol, because some of them they just can't cope, or they've got like some external challenges and factors that actually, they really affect that rehab process there. No, so I had used VueMotion before, but what I had used VueMotion for was mainly on healthy players. This is the first time that I decided, it's like, well, if we use these in healthy players, what about if we use like injured players? And obviously, I was looking at the same numbers, if you want, but I was looking with like a different outcome. And I think that's probably what people were saying is like, that's a slightly different, because when you look at what VueMotion is being used mainly, it will be to optimize performance. Like here we're talking is like, I just want to optimize this guy's drilling, like forget running, forget about like, like max velocity. Is this guy drilling well? Is this guy actually, is like the symmetry on that contact time between one leg and the other? What about like just that knee angle and the thigh angle between, one leg and the other? Is it actually good? Because if it's not good here, what we're going to see as we kind of like increase the frequency, the asymmetry is only going to get bigger. And as I said, to me, that was looking back. And as I said, when they asked me to write the article, I was like, just no one will be interested in these. And actually, I was a bit like, I don't know if I want to do it, and I'm glad I did, because it's just a reflection that came out of that. I had to go back and read all the notes and just go through like everything that had gone through, like the weekly plans and all that. And so really it's like, where was my mind when I was doing this, what I was thinking, and really go back to the numbers. And then like everything, the fact that at that point she had gone to the Olympics, in a way, like the pressure was off my shoulders, and I could go back and just be critical. And it's like, would I've done these like any different way? Is there any other ways that actually could improve that? And that was really the good part of the exercise, like really doing that reflection and looking back and writing it. And as I said, there was nothing out there that actually helped me, or there had been any other cases where like that kind of data was used in this kind of a scenario. We all know that it's part of an ACL like gold standard protocol. They do like a 3D analysis, which is in a hospital, in a lab, a 3D change of directions. Sometimes they do like some running, but again, there's two things. That's costly. You have to go to the hospital, and that may be like running on a treadmill or accelerating and decelerating and change of direction within 10-15 meters, which that's good, but compared to what this player needs to do on the page, it's very, very different. So it is one of those that's for me to be able to collect the data and be able to break it down and really understand, because that's sometimes we get into a point where we're using a lot of data, and sometimes we hope that the data is going to tell us the solution. These are the numbers, and you almost kind of like automatically that it's kind of like, this is what you do. What I really enjoy was, okay, there's a 42% asymmetry in the contact time between the injured leg and non-injured leg. What is this telling me? What's not working? What do we need to change? Because having that 42%, some people is like, okay, what are you going to do about it? And it's like, well, that's what actually I'm interested. That is telling me that when I'm looking at it, because everyone is talking about like the coaching eye, and when I was looking at it, she looked really fluent, really bouncy. I couldn't see anything. But then the data came back and it's like, well, there's a 42% asymmetry on the contact time. And I was like, okay. And that's kind of like when you start putting, it's like she's either not producing force hitting the ground, or she's not stiff enough landing on the ground, or where is she landing? Is in front of her or underneath her? And it's just kind of like really just breaking it down, and then understanding that, okay, if there's a 42% asymmetry between one leg and the other leg on the contact time, is the quadriceps ready then to produce force when it hits the ground? Maybe not. So if you keep pushing that, and it's like, okay, now you're drilling, let's start jogging and let's start running. Is that knee going to blow up? So I had to really go sideways here. And it's like, I need to find a different way to improve that contact time. And I think if you ask me, it's like, well, what were you doing previously as a physio? I would just kind of like, okay, now we're drilling. And then again, let's see how the knee feels tomorrow. Okay, it's a bit swollen, it's a bit puffy, it's a bit hot. Let's step back, let's rest, let's kind of like let it settle down, let's go again. And one of the things, if you ask any other practitioner, and again, I've been there, so I can talk about it. The ACL, it can become really frustrating, because as soon as you go into the dynamic phase, it's a lot of stop and start, stop and start, and stop and start. And it's kind of like, oh, I was running last week, but actually this week my knee doesn't feel good and the physio doesn't let me run this week. So we're going to take it easy. And next week you go and run again. This player, we went from drilling to running at 92% in 4 weeks. We didn't miss a single day. We didn't have to take like any day off. And that to me, waking up every morning thinking maybe today is the day would actually push things too much. But the data kept going the right way. And I was like, I just need to trust the data. And while I was skeptical, I was like, I just need to keep eyes on that knee and just keep making sure that it's quiet, that it's not swollen, that it's not hot. And if it's not, then, maybe we're looking at things differently here. I'm respecting that, not only the healing process, but actually I'm understanding what that knee can give me at that specific point in time, and I'm adapting the rehab for that day. I think that's something that as a normal rehab, if you don't have the data, you just go blind, and then you just go back the following day, and then that's the results of your session. If the knee is a bit swollen and puffy and hot, maybe you've done too much, and then you need to go back. It's like, maybe you need to do a bit less. And that's what I was using. So the right leg has never had any problem, any ligament injury or anything. So I was using that. It's kind of like, whatever this leg is telling me, the other one needs to kind of like just compare to this one. And regardless of the EMG, I think that's another area where since then, and probably in the last 18 months, I've been using. And I think from this level of rehab, there's absolutely something there. The EMG is used commonly in research. Once again, like the research will be, the vast majority will be like in healthy people. So as soon as you start using the EMG with like injured people, saddling people, is like, well, you can't really compare because everyone will come from like a different background and just may give you like a different output. But what we've seen here is from an ACL point of view, what's the main thing? The quadriceps inhibition. And the literature will tells you that these quadriceps inhibition could go up to like a good 12 to 18 months after the injury. And we knew that it's kind of like, if these players got any chance to go back, it needs to be strong. And by that, I mean, it needs to be robust, and we need to get these quads back. So something else, as I say, we really worked the player really hard, but actually we were really smart. What I did was, let me think of like any single quadriceps exercise you could do in the gym. And I came up with, I think, like 10 exercises. And you could be like the squat, the leg press, the knee extension, like the split lunge. And then what we did with like the EMG was actually looking at which ones are we getting more bang for the buck. And then what we did was, rather than give you 10 different exercises to provide variety, we're going to do 2, but we're going to do lots of these 2. And when I say lots is, we're not going to do like 3 sets of 10. We're going to do like 5 sets of 20. And what we did was, we were getting a lot out of something just very simple. I said, listen, this is never supposed to be like exciting, but I want it to be effective. And that's what we did. And that quad, like really quickly, we turned it around and it was firing really well. Once again, I thought it's like, we're onto a winner here. As soon as we start drilling, I thought it's like, okay, that's not only being strong, now the quad needs to be able to fire quickly and needs to be able to land at the right place. And the VueMotion is what just gave me that second part of the picture. As I said, it's not about only being strong, but now we have to be technical here, the way we do things. And maybe, before I took this job with Irish Rugby, I was working for track and field in England with British Athletics, and I spent like 5 years following the 100, 200 meters long jumpers and high jumpers. So powerful, fast people. And track and field is a ruthless environment, because those guys, they work so hard for like a tenth of a second, and those guys, they really aim for perfection, that perfect technique to actually just give them that perfect performance. So for years in that environment, I learned a thing or two about what actually looks good from a movement perspective and actually what doesn't look good. So I've applied that knowledge into here. It's kind of like, I can see this is looking good, but what VueMotion is giving me is that extra layer of, this is looking good, and actually this is the data. And when we look at the coach's eyes, we've always say that is what I can see, but it's what the player can feel. It's 2 things. And I think I would say now it's a third thing. This is what the data is giving us, to really put everything together. So what you can feel is good, what I can see looks good, and the data is confirming that actually what you feel is good. There's good symmetry, there's good rhythm, there's good angles just going on both sides. And that's kind of like what I really like about like VueMotion. There's no other product out there that just give you that. What we did for the first 12 weeks, what we look at was the strength, and as I said, that was only on the knee, but kind of just a whole like lemur strength. Obviously, just allowing that knee to settle down, focusing on the strength, and then we look at to trying to keep that aerobic capacity going. So we start with the bike, and then very quickly we're trying to get into the swimming pool. And the other thing that, as I said, I wanted to bring into here is we need to keep that neuromuscular system ticking. We can't allow this player to do, I know we were trying to do some aqua jogging in the pool, but usually what happens in these kind of things is you get someone in the gym for like 3-4 months, and then all of a sudden on a Monday morning is like, okay, let's go into the pits now and let's start drilling. And then just everything is just slowed down. Like just that neuromuscular pathway, it's a bit rusty. So it's like, I need to figure it out ways to actually just get some of the running positions, kind of like just that late swing phase, and kind of like just that's down and all that. I want to do these on a daily basis as part of my rehab, just getting into like a single leg knee, but actually the other knee is like nice and high and just holding it there. And then kind of like just start switching. And then just going almost from an RVL to kind of like a big step forwards to trying to replicate that sort of that pattern. And we did that on a regular basis. And then I started looking at using the squat rack and start doing some acceleration in that position. And not accelerating, but actually projecting that body in that position. And I wanted that to do it. So it's kind of actually, as I said, look, I don't know which sort of that's going to transfer when we go into the pitch, but I just want like just the brain to really, as soon as we start drilling, I want the brain to think, and it's like, this is the exercise 1, 3, and 5 that you've been doing for the last 10 weeks. Now you're just putting it together here, rather than it's kind of like, well, hang on, like, am I doing like a high knees or like an ace skip? And how does that look? And it's like, we don't have time, basically. As I said, we're going to try to put it very early, and we're going to put it in a position or in a place that reflects the stage of your rehab. So nothing is going to be ballistic. Nothing is going to be explosive, but certainly I want you to get in positions, and I want you to be able to produce force, and I want the brain to really understand what we're doing. So we spend that for the first 12 weeks, and then after that is like, right, we just need to test the model now. So what we've done, we're going to go, and there's a lot of evidence, and like a colleague of mine did a PhD with sprinting and looking at the correlation between some drills and max velocity and all that, and one of them was the high knees, the same landing position, and the other one was like the height of the knee as well. So it correlates. So I thought, if this is the end goal, the max velocity, let's start with like something nice and easy. Let's start with like some high knees or some ace skips. You're familiar with that. We've done part of that drill. We've broken it down. And that's actually at 12 weeks when we got the first video. And that's what actually showed me that it's like, actually is a 42% asymmetry between one side and the other side, which then it kind of like, it just questioned me that it's like, geez, it's a hell lot of, it's a big asymmetry here. Is at any point continuing doing these, or actually the knee is going to blow up, simply because either it's not taking the ground reaction forces, or actually it's not producing enough forces to really hit the ground. But then I thought, it's like, well, hang on a second, when you work with these guys, as soon as you get them moving, it's very hard to stop them and kind of like just bring them back. And it's like, you know what, we did a bit of drills today, but we're not going to do it anymore now because probably we're not ready. If what we need to do here is improve that contact time or improve that symmetry, let's find a different way. And something that we've been playing with from a hamstring rehab is actually the sled pulls. So I said, let's put the sled into here and see what happens. And as I said, so she was doing some sleds, and I used the software. I used the VueMotion to really see what are we getting with the sleds. And once again, uncharted waters. There's no evidence out there. There's no paper. So it was me like, maybe I'm wasting my time, but like, that goes part of the initial strategy. Let's be brave here. We're trying to do something that not many people have done. And if they have, it's certainly no one is published anything out there. So let's try different things, and let's go back to the data, and let's use the data to really guide like our strategy. And what we saw with the sled was the symmetry was within 10%. And I was like, okay, so the contact time had gone up, but the asymmetry was within 10%. I was like, okay, maybe we're into something here. Let's keep pushing and let's keep working on that technique with the sleds. And then a week later, we went back and he's like, let's do the ace skips again and see how that looks. And things have improved like massively. I was like, okay. So it is one of those that, as I said, I use the data as a guidance. And I think that's the beauty of this. the data didn't tell me what to do next, but the data, it just guide me. And it's kind of like, if you keep doing these, probably you're running into trouble. So just change the strategy. And we had a look at a different exercise. The data was way more positive, way more balanced side to side. And it's like, okay, let's keep working on that. And that's what we did. That was the strategy. And as I said, we went from week 12, 13 that we started the drills, and week 18, we were running at 92%. I was thinking, you could sometimes, some people could say, okay, so the drills you were doing, surely you could have gone to the hospital or like a research center and just do that with the Vicon or the 3D cameras and all that. It's like, probably, maybe it would be like a reducer space, but probably. But as I said, then as soon as you start adding the sled and things like that, it just becomes more complicated. But for me, it's like, well, we can run through the cones. Actually, we can put a sled, or we can put whatever we want, a parachute or whatever you're thinking that you can use. You can still actually, you're going to get really good data. You can apply straight away. So, you don't have to go anywhere. You just can do it with 4 cones, a camera and a tripod. And suddenly that's all you need. Absolutely. As I said, so, the main thing, and even sometimes coaches, when I talk about that, the first question is like, oh, how long is that going to take to set up? And how much time are you going to take out of my session? And it's like, to set up, it takes like a minute, it's just putting the 5 cones and then setting up the tripod, asking the player just to either to run, to drill, whatever you need to do through the cones, and that's it. Only use one, but what I've seen now, I see the value on just getting like a footage from the kind of like from the side and then actually from the front and the back. And I think it just gives you a different dimension of some information. And I've just gone through some really interesting cases where from the side you couldn't see what the camera from the front was telling you. And that was kind of like just putting everything together. Then you can make some pretty, like informed decisions about it. Like, I understand what the issues you're having here. Was really good. And as I said, she came from a first ACL, and I didn't do her rehab, somebody else. But as she put it, the first rehab was absolutely torture. For the first 3 months, she could barely move the knee. She didn't run after 7 months, and the whole thing, it took around 14 months to get back from the first ACL. So the fact that I was asking her to start drilling and then running at week 14, 15, 16, she was like, she just couldn't believe it. But it actually was just the whole rehab. It obviously, the approach had been completely different. But to summarize, like your question, once I was reflecting on the whole case study, I went back and, as I said, how many rehab sessions that actually I delivered on this player? And I counted it was 105 in those 5.5 months before she was selected. Out of 105 sessions, we only had to modify 7 sessions. And those 7 sessions was like week 6, 7, and 8. And that's it. So even from her point of view, it's like from a smoothness point of view, it doesn't get any better than that. And I know now why we had to modify those 7 sessions. But anyway, sometimes I thought it was like, this is a pretty good indicator. Like out of 105, only had to modify like 7. You're looking at you pretty much what you plan for the week and what you plan for the day, that's what you've been delivered. So obviously, like the players' feedback was like, this is just feels so much better compared to the first one. If you talk to any athlete, any player who's gone through like an ACL rehab, they'll say you just really go through some really dark moments. Like emotionally, you have to be so strong. And as I said, it's just all the turns and twists that you go through with that rehab. With her, was like, geez, I just can't wait for next week, because just I'm flying. And as I said, listen, it's not about flying. I want you to run. But like, she really, and as I said, very quickly, she was on board. And it's kind of like, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do it, because this just feels different. It just feels different. And people see me like striding and running, and it's actually, it just looks good and I feel good. And then the following day, my knee feels good. So it's kind of like, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. And I was like, listen, once again, it's like, to say that I don't know what I'm doing, it probably is not accurate, but it says like, this is uncharted waters. I'm going on a day by day here. I keep going back and forwards with the data, just making sure that I'm looking at the right thing. And the other thing is, she will get all the videos and she will love the data. When you strip down like the body and there's the lines and all that, she would love all that. So it is one of those that the players' interaction, I wouldn't share the data necessarily, but I would share like the videos. And then, she would do the rest, posting it on Instagram and these and that. And so she would just, when the camera was out, she would be ready for it. It wouldn't be like, oh, you're using the camera again. What do you want to measure today? She would be ready for it, because it's kind of like, something new is happening. I wouldn't say it's a testing day, but we keep kind of like just refining the process. So she loved the whole process. Look, I don't know if you're able to see the video, but there's one of them, the day that actually she was pulling the sled, that even she just went into kind of like just camera action, and then start like just pulling it. So, and it's something that, as stupid as it is, actually I thought was like, the player is engaged. The player just thinks it's fine. It's different, like let's go with it. Whatever works with the player, then, if you're happy and this is helping me, that's helping everyone. So let's go with it, As I said, I didn't share the data, but I will be sharing the images. And by that, I mean, I will get the kinogram that the software provides, and then actually I would just sit down with them. And that's, for them, it's just easy. Because if you say, oh, you 0.2 of a second on the left leg and you 0.16 on the right leg, it's kind of like, what's that mean? Which one is good and which one is bad? But if you show kind of like just two images, it's like, this is like you standing on the right leg and this is you standing on the left leg. Suddenly it's like, oh yeah, no, I can see that this leg is a bit more, this needs a bit more bend. Or I can see that the other knee is going higher. So I was actually sharing that and sitting with her. It's like, you see, this is what I want to see. I want to see that symmetry. I want to see that, like, you see the right knee is just nice and straight. I want to see that on the left knee is right and straight. And you can see on the right one, you sort of like, you line underneath the center of mass. I want to see this. You see the left one, you line a little bit in front of the center of mass. I want to see landing underneath. And that's why we're going to do exercise A, B, and C in the gym. It's because I want to correct that. So then the player is like, yeah, 100%. And, it's kind of like, how is this looking? And it was just like, I want that repetition. I want you to get better. And then in 2-3 days, let's go back through the system again. And then actually, that's almost like, that's the assessment. So I was kind of like assessing myself with what I was doing in the gym or in the weight room would actually translate into better performance. And I was using that as like, remember last week, look at the angles on the knee, look at the knee, look at where you're landing. This is this week. This is better. Still not perfect, but we are on that trajectory. So let's keep working on that now. Let's put like some resistance. Let's go faster. Let's make it higher, whatever it is. So the player is like, yeah, I really understand what you want me to do, because I've seen the picture there and I know that that's me and I know what it needs to look like. And these players, as I said, they're driven and they wire differently. And some of them, they see it as kind of like, I know what you want me to do here. Let's go and do it. They really understand. So as I said, I wouldn't go down to the numbers with the players, but it certainly till the end, after the end, it actually I show the numbers. What I was looking at, but I didn't want to go. And he's like, you know what? Like, there's a 42% asymmetry right and left, because that's just negative information, rather than just go there. It's like, I was thinking, okay, there's this asymmetry. What am I going to do about it? Let's come up with like a solution. Let's change the exercise. But I did go through like the kinogram and I compare like one side and the other side. And as I said, that's the other thing. Like the VueMotion, look, if you want the data, here is the data. You want the kinogram and the videos, here is that. You want to see the bodies, that's the bodies. You want to see the kinetics, the angles, that's the kinetics and the angles. So it is one of those that is like, how deep do you want to go? And you can go superficial and quite easy, or you can go to the nitty gritty of the data. And I love that, because you could spend a few hours just looking at the data and trying to come up with like conclusions there. So from that point of view, as I said, that was like a massive benefit for me. It hasn't only been with like ACL rehabs, but it certainly, I feel with the ACL, I've got a bit of a blueprint. So it actually, I know when to test it and what to test and what to expect from that. But actually now what I'm very interested is I'm looking after another athlete. And as I said, sometimes it's not good for your health. But I just love some of these challenges. Another athlete who's had an ankle fracture dislocation is the second one, and he's only 4 months apart. So he had one at the Olympics, and then that was in August, and then in December had another one, exactly the same ankle, way more severe than the first one. Which it's kind of like, what are the chances that the same athlete will have 2 ankle fracture dislocations within 4 months? So I've being the task now is like, look, will you be interested in rehabbing these athletes? And it's like, and ideally, it's a female athlete. We've got the World Cup, the Rugby World Cup this year in England later on. We've got the Six Nations started in was it like 6 weeks? Can you help us get athlete not only back, but she's a winger, so can you get her back faster, stronger, and a better athlete? So it is one of those that my first reaction is like, this is music to my ears. Afterwards, it's like, what I keep doing this to myself. Because once again, like now I feel a bit more confident. But, we're looking at an injury where sometimes you see these in football, and it's that horrendous one that actually like the ankle is just hanging up in the air and there's nothing attached there. So to be the second one in 4 months, once again, you look at the evidence and it's like, well, there is nothing out there. And sometimes these are called like a career-ending injury. So the fact that now you're trying to bring her back and pretty much, I think we're going to be the same time we did with the first one. And as again, I was involved with the first one, but it took for the first one like 4.5 months. And I think we're going to be like a similar 4.5 months. It's going to be very interesting. From a consultant point of view, I've been given very restrict orders in terms of, like no drilling, no jogging, none of that for the first 12 weeks. And I was like, geez, that's a long time, but I respect that. And once again, like, I'm going to use the VueMotion because I've had 12 weeks to prep that body. So when we give the green light, that is like, let's start moving now and let's see how we move. And that's just going to guide me to, like, I can't wait to really see what the data looks like. And it may be another like learning story because before we're looking at a knee, now we're looking at like a foot and ankle. So it's a very different strategy, and you have to think just slightly different. But I think it's just going to be a good one, and that's what actually I'm using, like the VueMotion. That some of these complex cases where, listen, that's going to take months. Now it's kind of like, look, we've got a tool here. We can accelerate, and by accelerate, once again, it's not by being reckless, but actually with like knowing if the body is tolerating what you ask him or her to do, and if not, what are you going to do? So like there's a famous track and field coach in America, Dan Path, and he would always say, you need to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. And that's what VueMotion is just helping me. So rather than saying, oh, well, look, that's not good, it's hard, it's kind of like, well, the data is not great, so probably what I want to do, it's not going to work out. Let's find a plan B. Let's find a plan C. Let's assess it. Let's get a look at the data, and let's go that way. And as I said, you go through like a different journey. But I think it's just going to be like another interesting one.
Yeah, and is it fair to say that the data informs that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. It just guides it, basically. Yeah. So, and the fact that the data is objective, I think is way better than the coaching eye, where it's kind of like, what do you see? And you're trying to look at it in slow motion. It's like, look, these guys, they're very good at cheating. And that's the thing, like that's the common theme with these guys. They are where they are because they find different ways to get the same task done. My argument is not always they're doing it in a very efficient way. They're effective in doing it, but they're not efficient. And to me, that's why we see a high rate of injuries, because the guys that actually they find a different way to do it, which is effective but not efficient. VueMotion, it helps me to really kind of like separate that. We want these guys to move in an efficient way. And as I said, the data just give you that, what you need to know. Is this guy efficient? Yes or no? Is it a good balance between right and left? Yes or no? Where is the movement coming from? Is that normal? Yes or no? And then here, as I said, you still need that clinical reasoning. You still need to sit down and really translate what the data is telling you in terms of, okay, so this is what the data is telling you. What's the context and how do you apply that?
Yeah, 100%.
Look, I did a talk like 4 days ago, last week, for an NFL team, and they gave me a very spicy topic, but I loved it. It was actually movement analysis versus weight room testing, and my argument is the needle has gone too far to the right. Like the guys and the sports scientists and the S&Cs and the athletic performance and all that, they're going to be in the gym. And if we talk about hamstrings, they can tell you 10 different ways they're going to like test that hamstrings: on a fourth plate, on a no board, on this, on that, jumping, pushing, pulling. And they'll tell you this is the amount of force that the hamstring is producing, this is how quickly that hamstring is working, and which is great. But then my argument is like, okay, so now if you bring this guy onto the page and we ask him to run, how does he run? Well, what do you mean? And it's like, well, does he running in an effective and in a coordinated manner, or actually if just going from A to B, like in a way that that the wheels are going to come off? So and actually they said, look, it is a good point. Back in 1998, a Greg Cook came up with like these functional movement screening, and everyone was looking at like how people move. And now we've just gone to the other end where actually no one cares about the way you move, but everyone cares how much force you can produce. And I'm saying maybe we need to go back to the middle. So answering your question, I don't see VueMotion going anywhere. If anything, I think it has to be part of that rehab. We lead with like elite people here. And if I said to you, it is like, listen, let's have a look, let's start moving you, and let's see how we feel. You probably is like we guessing, like we are guessing. Like these guys, they're elite, they cheat, they compensate. Like, and unless you've got a reliable way, and as I said, you wouldn't do that in the gym. You wouldn't guess if these guys is strong or not. Like you wouldn't guess that because the coaches wouldn't be happy. So why are we guessing on the pitch? Like that's to me what I don't understand. And I feel, as I said, now we're not talking about like running, but we're talking about like change of direction and like all the stuff that VueMotion is just bringing on. So people, and that's the new thing. People talk about deceleration is the new kind of like big danger here. The change of direction, that's where a lot of ACLs goes, the hamstring goes. Okay, well look, VueMotion can assess that. We can have a look, not only part of the rehab, but actually part of, if you want, optimizing that performance. We can screen players and we can compare, is this good, bad, or average? And then we can have a conversation. And then maybe we can put some plans in place to really, if anything, optimize those guys' performances. So from my background in elite sport, like if now you said, listen, VueMotion is closing down, see you later, thank you very much, I would try to look for a plan B, because otherwise, as I said, I'm guessing. And once I've had it and I've used it and I've seen the benefits of it, it kind of like, it's like, no, I need the certainty. The same way that the strength and conditioning coaches will have in the gym, just using the force plates and using the handheld dynamometers and everything else. You need that certainty. And I think that's what VueMotion is here to do. And hopefully it'll develop into, even more functional place of kind of like just change of directions and arc runs and going backwards and like everything else that just goes with it. So we can be more accurate with what we see in a pitch session. We don't need to go to, as I said, in a 3D setting, but actually we can do these pretty quickly. We could get quite a few players through in a very short period of time, and actually, we can share that data within the coaches at a very superficial level. With the rest of the stuff, we can go into more like a micro level, which is ideal. everyone is looking at movement, and probably they're looking at it from a different perspective. Everyone is looking at different aspects, but in the elite environment, the players are very good at compensating, are very good at cheating, and sometimes that's difficult to distinguish because things happen very quickly. You know, we're not talking about like a minute, we're talking about like that microsecond. I think what VueMotion is giving me is it's that second layer of safetiness, and it's kind of like what you're seeing is actually what's happening. And sometimes in this case it's been the opposite. It actually, I thought we were into a winning there. I thought that the player was moving really well. The data told me otherwise, which is what I want, you know. So it really confirmed that, you know, what I was seeing wasn't exactly what was happening. It was the opposite. And I think, to me, if you look at reliability the same way that you would do it like in the gym, you know, you test you guys and you look at getting some precise data, and you wouldn't just do it with kind of like just with your eyes. You want to try to get some informed data. I think when you go into the pitch and when you go into more dynamic phases, I think like the VueMotion is just giving you something that is just not out there. It's just giving you like objective data for that specific movement. And then once you put the context into that, I think that's just very powerful data to guide you the next process, the next stage of your rehab.